Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Today, we are going to be breaking down the testimony of Emma Daybell, and we are doing this live. So I am here to answer any general questions that you all have. I also posted to my community tab, and I have quite a few comments and questions that once we get through Emma's testimony, we're not going to watch it all because the defense, so she was called by the defense and their examination lasted, I think, over 2 hours. And then she was cross examined. I've cut out particular clips and then I have some notes on her testimony because I do want to get to Garth, her brother's testimony, and then also a piece of her husband's testimony as well. I like talking about how some of this may be impacting the jury because the jury always has it in the back of their mind. Is this individual credible? And I have some questions about some of the credibility of the people that spoke just based on their answers, based on yes, some of the things that happened. So we are definitely going to hop right in and get started. Uh, Thank you so much. I saw Chopper talking about being picky with the channels that you select. And so I'm glad that you are enjoying this one. This channel isn't for everybody, and that's okay. And so I'm about building community and the people that this is good for, like we have a good time. People that if this isn't the right fit, I have recommendations of some other phenomenal channels too. And so let's dive right into her testimony. This is where she's starting out, and Pryor is asking her about that she was subpoenaed by both the defense and the prosecution. The prosecution did not call her, and then he's kind of opening up with all of this. So let's get started.
And you did receive a subpoena from my office to appear as well.
I did.
And in that subpoena, did it indicate that we would rather you not review the proceedings as part of this as part of your testimony in this case?
Yes, and I did not.
I want to talk a little bit about um, how often we've had an occasion to talk about this case, you and I. And can you explain to the jury how often we've spoken about this case?
Um, I've talked to John maybe 3 times.
And last night we met prior to your testimony today. If that's correct.
That's correct.
At any time, did I indicate to you any way you're supposed to say or anything that you should say or were supposed to say as part of your testimony?
You told me just to tell the truth.
I thought this was helpful just for the defense to lay that he was not asking her to say anything that was inaccurate. It's going to come out later that she talks to her dad every day. And the prosecution is going to allude to the fact that they might have talked about aspects of the case. And the prosecution seemed to have like specific dates in mind with that. And so that just makes me wonder. And the prosecution is also going to say that they wanted her to cooperate with the investigation, and they did not find that she was very cooperative. That's the wording that we'll use there. All right.
Okay, and you're prepared to tell the truth today.
I am.
I want to talk a little bit about where you're living right now.
So much.
And where do you live right now?
I live in the house that was my parents'.
Okay. And at this point, you're not aware of any financial situation. Is it true that you're not aware of any financial situation between myself and your father regarding that house?
Because I think based on some prior testimony, it sounds like prior in lieu of legal fees, because Chad was probably limited financially, it sounds like Prior might own a portion, or all of Chad's property, the property where she lives. So the jury is because that kind of came out in front of the jury, and so I think that's why he's bringing this up right now.
That's correct.
And you don't have any personal knowledge of anything that is any arrangement between your father and I. Is that correct?
Yeah, I made an arrangement with my father. I don't know what he's decided with you.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your mother's health. What can you tell me in general about your mother's health in the last year or so?
Her health started declining. I was really worried about it. She, well, she'd always been one to be able to meet the demands of daily life without being exhausted. And she started going to bed at like before dinner some nights. It would be like 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. And she would sleep in too if given the opportunity. So suddenly needing to sleep a lot was very confusing to me.
Are you aware of any health issues that your mother may or may not have had?
I, at the time, was not. Since her passing, I've been diagnosed with sleep apnea, and my maternal grandfather also has sleep apnea, and uh, she's the generational link between. So I wonder if she did. That's something that obviously we can't investigate at this time, but symptoms like daytime tiredness and not getting restful sleep seem like they would fit what speculation.
It's sustained.
Okay. Were you aware of any other health maladies that your mother may have suffered from?
She had anemia.
Okay. Were you aware of any medications that your mother may have taken?
She preferred herbal supplements. She did take the generic form of the medication Prozac.
Okay.
That was the only prescribed medication that she regularly took.
Were there any non-prescription medications or herbs or supplements that you're aware of?
Oh, definitely. She really liked using colloidal silver was her.
And they're going to go back and forth about colloidal silver, and I'm going to skip ahead. I will mention now that her tone is very flat. And when I say like her affect, the way that she's speaking is just very flat, devoid of emotion. You will notice a difference when the prosecution is asking her questions. She will seem to get a little bit more agitated. And when she's shown the video by the prosecution of her talking to her dad when he was detained by police at the very beginning of that video, she gets a little emotional. But it's all about her dad, which is why we're going to talk about enmeshment. Before we move to Garth, we're just going to talk about enmeshment a little bit. All right. So let's start right about here. They're going to talk about the Fitbit, and they are going to talk about the 5K. And she is going to be adamant that her mom was not going to participate in a 5K, that she did not run a race. She's going to be very adamant about that.
I want to talk a little bit about the Fitbit. Your mother had a Fitbit, is that right?
Yes, she had a wristwatch that would count her steps.
Okay. And at this point, was it her habit to use that Fitbit on a regular basis?
Yes, she would wear it during the day and then charge it at night
Okay.
when she was sleeping.
So she was counting her steps during the day as part of that Fitbit.
Yes.
And is it your assessment that your mother physically was was in a fit state?
No, part of why she wanted the Fitbit was to increase her physical fitness.
Okay.
I personally am not a fan, and I don't have the clip queued up, but it's going to come up, and John Pryor is gonna kind of, sorry, not, is it John? I'm bad with names. Pryor? I know, yeah, yes, John Pryor. He is going to say that he got a lot of flack for, he's not going to use the word body shaming, but that's what he did. He kind of body shamed Tammy, asking if she looked petite and did she look fit. And Emma is going to say that both her and her mother were overweight. She had just had a baby. Emma had just had her I think first child, maybe something like that. She has 3 children now with her husband, and all of this. So this trial, her father is on trial for the murder of her mother. And to me, she doesn't come across likable to me. She doesn't come across like a loving daughter to me. Now, I'm sure she cared about her mom. She seems more connected to her dad in a way that, in my opinion, she seems to be throwing her mom under that bus with Lori in a way, where it's like she had bad habits, she was so sick, this was not a crime. She seems to be very stuck on that, and she seems to be believing everything her dad has said and everything a lot of what her dad believes as well. Those are just my thoughts.
She was working on her physical fitness.
Yes, she had one, I had one, and she bought my dad one, but he wouldn't wear it.
She probably could have tracked where he was
Oh.
with that. I don't know.
I want to talk a little bit about your husband Joe's parents. Who are they?
Ed and Charlene.
Okay, so they're gonna go back and forth about this like Fitbit thing. Um, she is gonna mention that she doesn't believe that her mom ran a 5K and that she just like was walking at the end. Like she's just gonna provide very different testimony than the other testimony that we saw at this case. And so gonna skip ahead where we're gonna talk about a little bit about Lori and the dark entity that was in Emma. We're going to talk about it.
Your father's not a perfect person, is he?
No,
And you're aware of a relationship that had been going on, and I'm not trying to embarrass you or cause you some difficulty, but you did subsequently learn that your father had a relationship with another woman,
yes,
and that was not an appropriate relationship.
it was not.
Okay. And at this point, it was, for all practical purposes, having a relationship with Lori Vallow while still being married to your mother.
That's correct.
And they kind of made it sound like no one's perfect. That's kind of how this testimony kind of went. Chopper, this is a great question. So Chad didn't have an official church. So he believed that he was going to be one of the ones welcoming back, like with the end of times, that he was going to play a crucial role in that, and that certain things had to be in place. And he had these visions. He can talk to dead people, he can see beyond the veil. And because of all of this, it made him, I don't know, like it's a very interesting belief system. She is going to say that she does not fully believe everything he says, but she's not going to clarify what she does believe and what she doesn't believe. To me, her testimony also kind of said that her mom also would determine light and dark of people, and that her mom almost did it more or something like that. It was very, very strange testimony. Very, very strange. And for me, I'm just not sure what the jury is going to think. And I think this goes to that patriarchal family. So I think for Emma, I think her dad is on a bit of a pedestal, and denial is a way to cope, because somebody was saying, I wonder how they're coping with this situation. So they fully believe, or I don't know, like to me, from what I see, I think they believe that it was all Lori and that their dad had nothing to do with it. Or if he did have something to do with it, that he's like supposed to be involved in this major spiritual event and he needs to be free in order to fulfill that mission. Something's going on in this family. I really, really think there's something going on. And all right. Let's keep going.
Would you agree that not anybody's perfect?
Yes,
You're not perfect.
no,
None of us are perfect.
nobody.
So when you say qualified male to help with the the dark spirit or the dark entity, what do you mean by that?
Like the procedure to get rid of it?
No, just the type of male. Is it someone who's head of a family or what is it?
In that case, I wanted to talk to my parents, but because they were my leaders in our family. But any man who is an adult and can make the promises to keep teachings of the church and to use the power to serve other people is eligible to receive it. That wasn't unique to my father.
And then and giving blessings in not your father's faith, but in your faith, it's not uncommon for people to give blessings to each other. Would that be fair?
It's common for people to do that.
And it's common for people to offer to give blessings to people in your faith. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it could come from any direction. Would that be fair?
What do you mean?
Anybody can give another person a blessing,
Yes, as long as the man is eligible.
or anybody can give a blessing to, if you felt, if you felt moved, you could give a blessing to another male. Is that possible?
In the fundamentalist views, around the time of Joseph Smith, there were women that would do that. That's frowned upon today, though.
Okay, so at this point, it's usually the head of the male or a male person who is the one who would generally give the blessing to other people. Would that be fair?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right. And he's going to he's going to try to get emotion code, something about emotion code. He was going to try to get that entered, and the judge did not allow it. He did not lay the proper foundation for that. And so he was not able to enter that testimony. Gonna skip ahead where she's talking about the day her mom passed.
I want to talk a little bit about the day of your mother's passing. And if you need to take a break or use a tissue, please let me know, or water. Please stop me and we'll take whatever time you need, okay?
She did not stop him at any point.
Um, you arrived at your mother and father's home approximately when on that day?
Uh, I don't recall an exact time, but it was before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Did you have an occasion to talk to Coroner Dye?
I did.
Can you tell me?
Okay. So she's going to talk about, I guess, talking with the coroner. I want to go back to the family's flat affect because I got a lot of questions and I've seen it in a lot of different chats. Could Emma possibly be on the autism spectrum? As far as I know, as far as I'm aware, she does not have any, she hasn't disclosed any mental health diagnoses. And what is more common is how emotions are expressed in a family. And to me, in this family, emotions are suppressed and held down. They're not openly or freely expressed. Chad has shown very little to no emotion throughout this whole process. I think with Lori, he was probably happy and passionate, and it was probably different when he was with Lori. There might have been times in his life where he had a different emotional expression, but to me, Chad just comes off as very emotionally immature, almost constrained and constricted. And there's this flat affect. I was surprised Garth looks so much like him. Garth looks so much like Chad. I did not realize that when they were all together for the TV interview years ago. I did another video talking about the children and what all they may or may not have believed. I've listened to some accounts of the family that Chad was talking about being a major figure in the church before he even met Lori. He was talking about predicting this major event and that, he needed to move his family to, I want to say Rexburg, that there was all of these things that had to happen and that he was going to play this big role. I heard on another podcast, or I've heard some allegations that Chad was kind of flirty with women, and he seemed to use his line seemed to be we were married. I think we were married in another life. Like that seemed to be a line that he used. And I think Lori was just primed to have this attention. And I think she already had some out there beliefs, but then with Chad and his beliefs, that's where it became dangerous from what I've seen, from my opinion. So, all right, let's keep going.
What the nature of that discuss, not necessarily what Coroner Dye expressed to you, but what you expressed to Coroner Dye?
Coroner Dye was inspecting my mom's body, and she asked us some questions about our wishes, and she offered an autopsy.
Oh,
In the area that we live in, the body would have to be taken to Boise, which is about 5 hours away, and it would delay the funeral. And um, this is my own personal view. I, I don't think autopsies should be done on anyone.
now, for me, if the manner of death is undetermined, somebody who seemed to be healthy unexpectedly, dies unexpectedly, I I personally feel there should be an autopsy, because if there's some undiagnosed medical condition or if there's something going on, I would want to determine a more detailed cause of death. That's just how I feel. It was just very odd for her to say that she doesn't believe in autopsies at all. To me, what the defense is trying to do is distance that Chad was the one that didn't want the autopsy, and Chad was the one that was rushing the funeral, and Chad was the one that was doing all of these things. I don't think he's going to testify. I could be wrong. I don't think he's going to get on the stand. He would have to answer some questions. I think it would be embarrassing for him. I could be wrong, but I think it could be embarrassing if he did get on the stand. And yeah, I don't think he will. We'll see what happens. I personally don't think he will.
And the idea of um, my mother's body undergoing that was very distressing to me.
Okay.
I saw a great comment about women speaking with little girl voices. And if you watch the Netflix documentary, lots of trigger warnings for SA. But the keep sweet and pray, you will see that sometimes, especially within FLDS, but sometimes within some church groups, sometimes girls are trained or taught to be sweet, to speak softly, to, I don't know, like sometimes girls are trained. I am not a part of that particular religion. I'm just going based on things I've heard, things I've seen, and yes, so that's my thought on that one.
Did your father at the time in front of Coroner Dye ever express an opinion as to whether he felt one way or the other about getting an autopsy?
He did not.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation, lack of foundation.
If you would rephrase that, Mr. Pryor, to make sure it's something she observed and not through other
Okay.
means.
Did you ever observe your father have a discussion with Coroner Dye on the subject of an autopsy?
My father was very distressed and was not speaking at that moment.
Okay.
He didn't express any opinion.
Okay. Did you express an opinion to Coroner Dye about what your wishes were?
I did not want an autopsy.
Did your father agree with you, or
Anyone remember if the coroner said that Emma was the one that said she didn't want an autopsy? And memories are weird, where sometimes your brain will go back. And that's just odd that she would say that. Chad reminds me of Jody Hildebrandt, or I think Jody Hildebrandt's a good example. Somebody that is just very convincing, somebody that on their own, I don't know that they could lead a movement, but they try to get somebody alongside them that maybe is a little bit more outgoing, that's a little bit more friendly. And I'll never forget when Jesse Jody's niece talked about the fact that Jody was so convincing that she could tell you, like, the sky was purple and you would believe her. And Chad seemed to have a similar thing where he could be very persuasive. Now, not with everyone, because Heather Daybell did not put up with, like, she did not believe what he was saying. She thought he was, she has expressed her thoughts about him very openly. If you check YouTube, she has multiple interviews she's done talking about her thoughts and her observations, and she did testify in court as well. Yes, she was called by the prosecution. I was trying to remember if she was called by the prosecution or the defense. She was called by the prosecution.
Disagree, or do you know what kind of a position he may or may not have taken at that point?
He nodded.
Okay. But he wasn't the one insisting, to your recollection, on having an autopsy done, was he?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
At any time, did your father express an opinion as to whether or not he wanted an autopsy or not?
Objection, Your Honor, this calls for speculation.
Overruled.
May I
any-
vote for dire native objection?
That's the way it was worded. It's a proper question the court will determine. So go ahead, Mr. Pryor.
Can answer that question, Emma.
Will you repeat it?
Madam Clerk, would you repeat the question for Emma?
You're gonna go back.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. This calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
He never expressed an opinion.
Okay.
And so that is that part. I want to skip ahead to 2 hours and 20 minutes. This is towards the end of her testimony with being examined, or, the defense's side.
About an email that your father sent to your mother on September 9th, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Pryor, quick sidebar, please.
Uh-oh. Yeah, you can't ask her about an email her dad sent? That's weird. I like this judge.
Objection, Your Honor, may I vote dire native objection?
You may.
I like this judge.
Miss Murray, did your parents tell you about every message they ever sent each other?
No.
Did you look at their phone records routinely?
No.
Did you look through their phones routinely?
No.
Your Honor, this would call for speculation. I'm going to object.
Sustained.
Again, it was your mother's primary responsibility to manage the pet cemetery, correct?
Yes.
And it would be, if your father were to do something in the pet cemetery, would it be unusual for your father to have to let your mother know that he was doing something?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
To me, it was almost like they were trying to get testimony in through Emma that would make it to where Chad doesn't have to testify, to me. That's my thought. That's how I took some of her testimony. I am going to skip ahead to the cross-examination, and they are going to ask her about the we. I will say, and let's get to some of your questions. I will say that I agree with Buttercup. I think Emma spoke very unkind about her mom. And I think her mom was just trying to love and support her family. And it's sad that, in my opinion, I think Chad saw Tammy as an obstacle, and Lori made it very clear that she did not want to be his mistress, that she wanted to be his wife, especially after her children. Like, she did all of this, like, they did all of this together. From what that's how I feel. And this is what happened. I don't think Emma sees it this way. And that's where, once again, I go back to the fact that I think denial can sometimes be protective. When that is broken, and I saw somebody mention Harley Hunt. I covered her testimony. That's Letitia Stout's daughter who testified against her. I've covered a few adult children that have had to testify against their parent. And they just talk about like how they were in denial, and then finally they had to admit the truth. And the fact that she hasn't seen all of the evidence and all that's come forward in the trial, but they present it as though there's this conspiracy against their dad. And I don't think there's evidence of that. Now, in the Karen Reed trial, that trial is like blowing my mind. I don't know what happened in that. I think her defense is doing a phenomenal job poking holes in the prosecution's case, because there seems to have been things that are a little questionable that happened during that investigation. Evidence magically appearing. I don't know, like that case seems to be a bit of a mess. To me, that's not the case in this particular trial. So how do I think that how long do I think it'll take for Emma to start to unlearn what her dad has taught her? And that's where she will have to want to go on that journey. She might stay in kind of his realm, and I think the contact that she has with him, that the daily contact that she has with him, I think that keeps her like still under his control, in my opinion, or still kind of in his sphere. She would have to distance herself in order to kind of find what she believes and what she thinks. Those are just my thoughts. All right. Her speech pattern was very, very similar to Chad's. The whole direction thing of like southeast, I guess the I think it came up during her testimony that she was like Googling wind direction. That whole conversation was very odd. I don't think she has an intellectual delay. I think it's just the way that they talk is just very robotic and very rigid. I think that's just the way that they talk and think. Those are just my thoughts. Um, all right. A lot of people ask thinking that she might be on the spectrum. I personally do not see that. There would be some repetitive behaviors. There would be some other symptoms that would be there as well. And then Lori, I agree. The way she speaks is odd. Like she's a young child. She seems to have rehearsed what she wants to say in her head. Yes. All right. Like, okay. Her reaction to the prosecution, I I think it makes her look a little less credible if she's getting upset by the questions that they're asking and kind of what they're saying. To me, it could affect her credibility. So let's skip ahead to the cross-examination where they're going to talk about the we, and just the way that she talks about her mom. In my opinion, she's kind of condescending and putting her mom down in a way to help her dad, but without thinking about how this affects her mom's memory. Those are, I feel like we in the chat, like everybody else, our hearts are breaking for Tammy and her heart is breaking for her dad. Like that's just how I see it.
You talked about your mom playing on the Wii. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And what kind of game was that again?
an exercise game.
Did you see her do that a lot?
In 2018 and earlier.
Was that something that she enjoyed?
Yes,
Fair to say your mom enjoyed physical activity?
she enjoyed video games.
And when you say video games, some of them,
So that's like she seemed irritated by the question. She enjoyed video games. Like, so you hear more emotion from her when she's being cross-examined. And what I hear in this is anger. And at some points it doesn't seem to be repressed. Like she seems to be expressing it in a passive aggressive kind of way. But so problematic.
you described the Wii. Were there other types of video games your mom liked?
Yes,
And what were those?
farming simulations, Pokemon.
Would she play those?
And she's only mentioning handheld ones because they're trying to present this narrative that Tammy was sick and ill and close to death. Like that's what they're trying to present. It's very odd that Chad was talking about it was like making mention that he felt Tammy was going to have a short life. He had made those kinds of comments. And that's where the line between his spiritual beliefs and his personal wishes and desires, there seems to not be a clear line between the two. Because I don't think he wanted to get divorced. I'll just say that. I'll leave that there.
Was on her phone, do you know?
Yes, and other handheld devices.
Welcome.
And then she liked to play the Wii as well.
Periodically.
So much putting Tammy down.
And she took self-defense classes,
Not formal classes. It was with our church.
but was that a voluntary thing?
Yes,
So she wanted to go do that,
yes,
and that's physical activity.
yes,
She wanted to participate in Zumba, correct?
yes,
She wanted to do clogging.
yes.
She was training for a 5K.
No,
You say she wasn't training for a 5K.
she was not training for a 5K.
Would it surprise you that other people said she was?
No,
We talked earlier a little bit, you weren't privy to all your mom and dad's communications, right?
no,
You weren't privy to all your mom's conversations that she'd have with people, correct?
correct.
So at school, she may have conversations when you weren't around, right?
Yes,
She may tell people things that you have no idea she told them, right?
yes,
And council talked to you about an insurance policy that was increased. Do you recall that?
yes,
And you said your mom did that on her own.
yes.
Why was your dad's signature on the application?
I think she took out insurance on him.
Nope.
Your Honor, may I be handed States Exhibit 151?
Yes.
So they are going to show her the document and show her that it's just her dad's signature and that the coverage was only for Tammy. And yes. So let's get to this part where she gets a little emotional when the prosecution plays this video. And this is the video of her father being taken in or just being held at first, but then he knows that he's gonna be arrested. And during this process, so if you watch that video, Chad does not seem scared. He does not seem afraid. He seems very calm. He does not show a lot of emotion. He's kind of laughing and joking. And he knows that he's going to be locked up for a period of time. I do think he thought, and he thinks that he'll be found innocent. I do think, I don't like, yeah, I don't think he's as delusional as Lori because Lori is just stuck in those delusions and she says it. Like she says that she thinks she visits with her children and Tammy. Like Lori seems to still very much be caught up and openly caught up in a lot of that. I don't think Chad would openly make those kinds of statements. Lori definitely did.
Is it fair to say your dad had conversations possibly outside of your presence?
Yes,
Were you there when your dad was providing your mom's medical history to Deputy Greenalch, the officer?
yes,
Were you there when he provided it to Deputy Coroner Cammie Wilmore?
yes,
And were you there?
There's a great question. And so Emma had a baby recently, and I know that we try to understand how somebody could do this, and that's where right after this my last segment of testimony, I am going to play for you. I'm going to show you all some signs of an enmeshed family. And to me, in this family, she seems to be on her dad's side, which makes her kind of against her. But I don't think she would admit or want to be against her mom, but I think she truly believes what she's saying. Like I think she does, and I think she's wanting to save and protect her dad. I'll say that again. I think she is wanting to save and protect her dad. Chad in no way seems to be upset that she's up there, that she has to be in this position. Now, he doesn't show a lot of his emotions outwardly anyway, but I personally, and these are just my personal thoughts. I don't know her. I don't know what's going on with her. Just in general, in cases like this, these are just my thoughts.
When he provided it to coroner Brenda Dye.
Yes.
Did you provide any statements about your mom's health at that time?
I don't remember.
You said that you had serious concerns about her health though, right?
Yes,
But you don't remember if you said anything.
she wasn't talking to me, so I didn't answer her.
At any point, did you reach out to law enforcement to tell them about any concerns you had about your mom's medical conditions?
It wasn't a crime, so no.
You were asked about when your mom was exhumed. Did you know there was going to be an autopsy?
I assumed there would be,
Did you reach out to anyone then to let them know of your concerns?
family members.
Did you reach?
So the prosecution is trying to get at the fact that she never brought up the concerns that she had about her mom's medical history. And now we're going to get to the video with her dad. So this was the quote that it wasn't a crime. Yes. And then this part. All right. So let's play from here.
Hi. They said I could talk with you and I didn't want you to be alone. I love you so much.
Glad you came over.
I thought they had taken you downtown already.
I got them out to the Fremont County line.
I saw it as soon as you left.
Y'all tell me what y'all think. Of all the times I thought she might cry during her testimony, I wasn't prepared for this, but it kind of makes sense because I think she remembers being upset that day. She probably remembers how this has impacted her and her family. And yet, she doesn't seem to be grieving those children that they are finding on her dad's property. They don't seem to be grieving or concerned about that, or the fact that now we think, is there a chance that your dad might have been involved? That's not what's bringing up this emotion. What's bringing up this emotion is her, like the last time she, like when she saw her dad in this police car. That's what's bringing up this emotion. I just thought that was very, very strange. I agree that she is testifying for Chad. And I think that's why the defense was so careful to say that they did not like tell her to say anything, that she wasn't encouraged to lie about anything. I didn't play the specific clip, but the prosecution specifically asked her about how often she was talking with her dad, and they are talking every day. And they specifically talked about, I think, the Fitbit. They talked about certain things. And what the prosecution seemed to be alluding to, or maybe just trying to drop that nugget for the jury, was Chad encouraging her to edit her testimony? That was the vibe I got from the line of questioning from the prosecution. Exactly. Like she's remembering like her own pain, and not like, because if I was a family member or relative of JJ or Tylee, this would be kind of hard. And I want to say that someone, I think it might have come up with her testimony, her dad telling her that the kids are in a safe place. I think it came up with Garth's testimony as well. Dad said that they were in a safe place, but based on his like odd, weird beliefs, that safe place could have been like free from the zombie and like now their spirit is free. I don't know that safe place was a real safe place. And the defense tried to put that back on Lori, that like Lori must have known where the kids really were, and there's no way that her dad knew. But I don't think they're gonna be able to get there. I think the prosecution has put forth a really, really strong case here. And I do think that she loves her dad, and I don't have a single family member like, my love for my family member wouldn't overshadow and thankfully, I've never been in this situation. I'll be honest, like, I've never had to be in her shoes. I just hope that I would still have integrity. Integrity is incredibly important to me, and to me, she's not coming across as credible. She is not at all coming across as credible, in my opinion. We just throw the "in my opinion" out there every so often. All right. Yes. So we are going to talk about enmeshed families. So I found this site. I do not know. So like I was just Googling signs of an enmeshed family and I came across this site. I do have a link to the full article down in the description. Meshed families describes a family that describes family relationships that lack boundaries, such as roles and expectations are confused. Parents are overly and inappropriately reliant on their children for support. And to me, I think Chad relies on Emma for his own emotional support. Now, I do not, because somebody brought up, could there have been something inappropriate with the relationship between Chad and Emma? I don't think there was anything in like as far as SA or any I don't personally feel that there was anything like that. Emotionally, they seem to be one where she feels like she has to take care of him in that way. And that's just it's not great. And children are not allowed to become emotionally independent or separate from their parents. So I think Chad very much wants Emma to stay very connected to him, for her to rely on him for advice and support, for and not to like grow emotionally where she's making decisions and and thinking for herself and considering what she believes and doesn't believe. These are just like in general in an enmeshed family, those boundaries are not there. So in enmeshed families, family members are emotionally fused together in an unhealthy way. All right. I was making sure that I'll make this all a little bit bigger. All right. So within this type of system, family relationships are characterized by weak boundaries, lack of emotional separation, intrusive demands for support or attention that prevent family members from developing a strong and independent sense of self. So here are some common signs of enmeshment, and that there's this lack of emotional and physical boundaries. So what an emotional boundary is knowing where my emotion ends and my family member's emotion begins. So as a therapist, I practice this both in my like clinical work. So that's how I see about 26 to 30 clients a week. Normally 2 psych evals and about 24 to 28 individual or family therapy clients a week. I hear it all. I work with individuals that have survived horrific things and individuals that are needing to process through a lot. And being there, being a support for my client, I need to make sure that I see where their emotions start and mine end. And it's easiest to describe in that clinical relationship. I do this in my family relationships as well. So if a family member calls me incredibly distraught, I can support them, But in talking to them, it doesn't ruin the rest of my day. Now, if our family experienced a trauma, if our family experienced a major loss, and I was upset based on what I was told, it would be based on my experience and my grief and my feelings. And there might be a part of me that wanted to feel for them, but me feeling their emotions for them is not healthy. It does not take their emotion away. I've had the privilege of supporting individuals in very, very dark times. And probably some of the best things I did was just sit with them while they cried and just held space for that pain, just to be there as a support, not trying to make the pain go away, not trying to reduce or minimize their pain, just letting them freely express it. I did encourage family members in crisis to get their own therapist, to have their own emotional supports, because I can't do that for them. Like that they have to, I'm a therapist, but I'm not their therapist. And even with friends, even with other people, those are the boundaries that I have. There are therapists that don't have good boundaries there, but like that's a whole other video and we don't have time for that. um you don't think wait a minute. Okay, so I'm gonna read number 2. You don't think about what's best for you and what you want. It's always about pleasing or taking care of others. You feel responsible for other people's happiness and well-being. You're guilted or shamed if you want less contact, or you make a good choice that's good for you. Your parents' self-worth seems to hinge on your success and accomplishments. And so that's where my child, he's so funny. So we would love for him to go to our alma mater. So my husband and I, we both graduated from Virginia Tech. My 6, almost 7-year-old, he's like, I'm not going to college. It's like, okay. Like if he chooses to not go to college, he can still have a successful life. He can still have a successful career if he chooses a different path. I don't have this preconceived notion of what his life is going to be that's based on my wants and desires. Like he gets to create the life he wants to live. Like that's healthier. Your parents want to know everything about your life, like there are no boundaries. Ugh. Your parents' lives center around yours. Your parents don't encourage you to follow your dreams or may impose their ideas about what you should be doing. Family members overshare personal experiences and feelings in a way that creates unrealistic expectations, unhealthy dependence, and confused roles. Often, enmeshed parents treat their children as friends and rely on them for emotional support and share inappropriate personal information. So that's where a teenage child maybe being aware of their parents' infidelity and the other parent doesn't know or something. That would be an extreme example of something like that. You feel like you have to meet your parents' expectations, giving up your own goals because they don't approve. You try to avoid conflicts and don't know how to say no. You don't have a strong sense of who you are. You absorb other people's feelings, feel like you need to fix other people's problems. So here are some characteristics that we described. So once again, lacking boundaries, children being discouraged from being emotionally independent, intrusive or needy quality to relationships, oversharing. You're expected to conform to the family norms and traditions. Self expression is stifled. Parents may treat the children as friends or confidants. It's not acceptable to have your own opinions, beliefs, or ideas that differ from the family. Fierce loyalty is expected, demanded, required in order to kind of be in a good spot. Guilt and shame are used to maintain the status quo. All right. So I'm going to come back to the chat to see if we have questions. Um, have you seen Love? Yeah, one cult members. Okay. I'm going to have to look at that one. I'm going to have to. So I covered a different one. I'll have to see if that was. Whoa. The Cult of Mother of God. I have not. I will have to, because it looks like there is a documentary or something. I will have to research that one a little further. I have not heard of it. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Super chat. All righty. All right. So to me, Garth came across a little bit more came across different. Let me see. Yes, this is the one. To me, Garth's testimony seemed still seemed like there could have been some issues with his credibility, but he at least seemed to be grieving his mom to me. And they talked about how anxious he was. Um, so when we talk about family roles, in a dysfunctional family system, there are roles that people get stuck in. So every family has roles. Like every family might have a golden child for a period of time. In a dysfunctional family system, people get stuck in those roles. If you Google or if you search in YouTube, Dr. Patrice Berry family roles, I have a whole video on just that one. And so after this, check it out. Oh, a lot of those enmeshed symptoms are similar to adult children of alcoholics. Yes, and that I think the language of enmeshment could be wrong. Codependence came out of AA. I know the language of codependence came out of there. Enmeshment comes out of family therapy. So that was Emma. Oy. Let's skip ahead to a little bit of Garth. 351. So Garth seemed nervous. I don't know. So I kind of had a soft, I don't know, like Garth, I don't know. I had a soft spot for Garth. I think I must have got my time wrong. Uh-oh. Is this day 26? Yes. Okay. I might have got my timestamp wrong. Okay. Because Garth is going to come in and he's going to immediately take a drink of water. So is that this part? Yeah, there's Garth. Garth seemed a little nervous, and understandably, this is a difficult situation to be in. So let's play this part.
You may.
The information I share is for information only. You can't so enmesh families isn't a diagnosis or anything like that. It just helps me know if my family, if we have boundaries. And sometimes I need to set up boundaries. And there are people that do not like boundaries. Oh, this is not therapy. It can be therapeutic, but it's not therapy. Legally, I have to say that. And it's not. Uh, and so he immediately comes in, he gets him some water and takes a sip. Oh yeah. Yeah, he poured himself a whole cup of water. And he just seemed a little bit more nervous to me. And Garth talked about I think him and Chad look exactly the same. Good gosh. They look so much alike. He talked about his mother's health as well. He believes in evolution, and there seemed to be some interesting thoughts about law enforcement. Emma brought it up as well, that they felt law enforcement were like hounding them, but law enforcement were just looking for these deceased children, and they were very invested in this case. And so those are my thoughts on it.
Did you go in and talk to him?
I did not. They were asleep.
You say they were asleep, but did you actually go in the room?
I assumed they were asleep.
So 2 bodies lying in the bed.
Yes.
Anyone else in the house when you got home?
It was just us.
It's weird that Chad called out for help from Garth, and then it sounds like Garth alone picked his mom up like that. Like, what was going on with Chad? Like, why didn't Chad come over? What was going on? I don't know. He was much less combative to me. His testimony, I don't think it was particularly helpful. Uh I like that the prosecution got in there, that while he was trying to say that when he got home that his parents were in bed asleep, the prosecution brought up the fact, oh, like you just saw two bodies in the bed. And I guess on some previous testimony or some other witnesses said that Garth had mentioned something about seeing Tammy on the couch, and they were trying to say, like, did his testimony change? Garth had a lawyer come in, and he had a defense lawyer for his jury. No, it's that, that jury, the jury that decides whether they grand jury for his grand jury testimony, because he was brought back twice. But the grand jury had additional questions for him, and that's why he was brought back. Pryor tried to make it sound like this was so horrible. Oh my gosh, why are they messing with him? And it really didn't even seem that important. I did want to mention he talked about his dad shooting the raccoon, but it's around the time, like, and his dad, like, burying the raccoon, but there was no raccoon remains found. And so I think in a lot of our minds, we're wondering if that was Tylee. And I don't think his testimony helped. Emma's husband testified. Let me get his testimony queued up. I'm not going to play through all of it, but there was a portion where he got a little combative to me, um, saying that he would never be law enforcement. And I don't know how that played with the jury. I could see that possibly not going over well with the jury. Him seeming to have this disdain for law enforcement. Like, I don't think that would play well. All right. So let me see if I have that exact timestamp. Um it's 36:57. Because I'm looking at Emma's husband's cross-examination today, just taking a look at that part. All right, let's share this tab. So Emma's husband testified. I don't think it was particularly helpful for the defense, but let's play a little bit of
Answer
this.
was to that.
Once 2 days ago and one other time on the phone.
Mel, you wouldn't disagree, would you, that the loss of Tammy Daybell would be and was a traumatic experience for your wife and for her siblings?
Absolutely. All right. I absolutely would agree that that would be the case.
Likewise, would you agree that the finding of Tylee and JJ's bodies on Chad's property was likewise a traumatic experience?
Yes, for the whole family, indeed.
So it would be safe to say then that over the course of the last 5 years, you have probably had many conversations with your spouse about the surrounding facts, haven't you?
Yes.
And likewise, is it also safe to say that you've had many conversations with her siblings about these same situations?
Not, I wouldn't say many, but because we didn't live in the same household and we weren't gathering weekly even. So I wouldn't say many.
But you did have conversations over the course of the last 5 years with the siblings.
Yes.
You said that you didn't live in the same house with them? Is that what you said?
With the exception of one brother, one of Emma's brothers. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll come back to that. With respect to the events of October 9th, you were asked some questions about the layout of your house relative to Chad Daybell's. And you explained.
And they kept saying kitty corner. Was this? So I had never heard kitty corner before. I've always heard cat a corner, but I had never ever heard kitty corner. But is that a Midwest thing? Is kitty corner a Midwest thing? I have no clue. To me, he came across combative as well, especially when they were asking questions about about law enforcement. And so I'm gonna get to 49. This part is gonna be about when he met Lori.
You were asked questions, and we've already alluded to this, that at some point you had found out that JJ and Tylee had been buried in Chad's backyard.
Correct.
Right. You had described, in fact, that you believe JJ had been buried by the pond and Tylee by the fire pit, correct?
Yeah.
Now, have you ever met JJ and Tylee's mother?
Lori Valla?
Yes.
No. I mean, yes, sorry. I went back to the thing you were talking about, them in particular. Yes, I've met Lori.
Yeah. And isn't it true that the first day you met Lori was the day after Tammy's funeral at Chad's house?
Yes.
So she came to Chad's house, and that's where the family met her.
Yes.
And that was it
Chad seems to be smiling. Oh, you say kitty corner in New York, in New Jersey. I had never heard kitty corner. I had never ever heard of kitty corner before. I had never ever heard of it. Okay. It's Western, so lots of different thoughts on the whole kitty corner. I personally had never ever heard of it before. But with him talking about when he met Tammy, to me, all of that is a little suspicious. And once again, Chad seems to have a little smirk, and maybe even just mentioning, I don't know if he's smirking because of Lori or this is something he's proud of. It's just, it's odd to me.
immediate day after her funeral?
I don't recall the exact day, if it was the immediate day after or shortly after, yes.
Yeah, and you would testify to that effectively, that
Yep.
it was the day after.
And it could just be the way his face is. I don't know. It's just odd to me.
Have you ever heard the name Alex Cox?
Yes.
And who is Alex Cox?
Lori Valla's brother.
Had you ever met Alex Cox?
No.
Had you at any point in time ever seen Alex Cox on Chad's property?
No.
You were asked some questions yesterday about the layout of Chad's property. Do you recall specifically getting a question about the long driveway?
Yes.
And you were asked a question about whether or not someone could access the long driveway to a place behind the property where they then could not be seen from the roadway. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you acknowledged that there is a place back there where someone could access through the driveway, through a gate, and then not be visible from the roadway to the public while they're back there.
He's going to say yes. And once again, so I don't see how this testimony was particularly helpful. And I missed the part. I thought I had it queued up, but I didn't have the exact timestamp for when he talked about law enforcement. To me, he made some very disparaging comments about law enforcement. And normally on a jury, you would have people that are relatively friendly, I would think, to law enforcement. And so I think the defense has 2 more experts that are coming in supposedly tomorrow. We will see if the defense is going to rest. The Memorial Day weekend is coming up, and so we'll also see just how long the jury is going to take to deliberate. I could see it taking, because they have so much to go through. They have so much to take a look at. They have so much to consider. And so I just want justice for Tammy, JJ, Tylee. And I think the prosecution did a phenomenal job putting forth their case. I don't think the defense has done a great job. I did a video earlier today talking about the forensic pathologist. I don't think her testimony helped the defense. They had somebody else try to throw Melanie Gibb under the bus, but it was briefly, and it was kind of confusing. Like, why is this person here? And but like he testified, and to me, it didn't help at all. And then they had somebody talking about a shovel, a guy that was digging, because I think they were trying to allude to, did that individual use one of Chad's shovels? Like, I think they were trying to allude to something like that. And it just didn't seem helpful. And I found, so when I Googled it, so I did take French. So quatra. Oh no. Oh, no. Okay. I can speak in German and French. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't get me lying. I sometimes my French and German mixed together. Uh, I can count to 10 in Spanish as well. My Spanish is not as great. I actually did take French and German in school. Not enough to be able to speak it conversationally, just enough to ask, where is the bibliothèque? That's all I can do. And order food and ask, is it free? Those are like, I want to be able to ask how much things are. Know the numbers, that kind of stuff. But thank y'all for joining me. This case is very, very heavy. It's difficult to watch. I like being able to go over these things with you all. I have a Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow playlist. I did cover Lori's sentencing, or like when she gave that horrific statement. I did cover that one. That was the only thing that was televised. But I just I just can't. Um, I truly appreciate each and every one of you. This community is why I enjoy doing lives. And oh wow, that's so cool. You have therapy right after. And it would be hilarious if you were like, let's talk about enmeshed families. Like so I love it when clients come with stuff that they've learned on social media for us to unpack. Or if there was a TikTok or an Instagram post, or because that's how I learned about egoism, that other side of narcissism, the like sometimes the victim of like narcissistic abuse, um, that egoism, like that's I learned it from a client that mentioned it, and it was super cool. So I love it when clients bring me stuff that is helpful to them. It's funny when I'm mutuals with the person, so there are quite a few therapists on Instagram and TikTok that I'm mutuals with. And I do like bringing people on the channel when I can. So watch something funny, do something fun. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.